Hi, Islamic Dad here. If you enjoy this channel, please subscribe. It does help me out a lot. I'd recently done 2 videos on the devalue phase and to a minor extent the emotional discard phase. And I was kind of just thinking about things today from my own life and my experience with my last girlfriend, the covert narcissist. And I realized the timing of some of the things that had happened. So, over the course of the 4-year relationship, I think we broke up like 3 or 4 times. So, I don't know what everyone else's experience is with the narcissist in relationships. But yeah, so the first 2 or 3 were really quick. And I credit that to them happening earlier in the relationship. One of them, I would say, possibly still within the love bombing phase, and then the next 1 or 2 during the far beginning of the devalue phase. So not really any type of concern at that point with either of those. And then there was a situation where early part of the last year of the relationship, March, April, May, it's all a blur at this point. There was a bit of a blowout that ended with us breaking up, which is fine, no big deal. And at that point, I did the whole, 30-day no contact, and that was really good. It really helped me get closer to having some, being able to perceive things with perspective, and also, working on myself and kind of what I wanted for my life and who I was, separate from the relationship. And so I was able to come back, and at that point we were just, friends initially, and that was kind of odd. So yeah, speaking of, I'll go into more detail. So it was odd in that it was a very good example of how the smear campaign starts way farther into the devalue phase than you would think otherwise. So we got back together, and things were not easy, but we were both putting in the work to make things better and for the relationship to get going again. And so that was my experience with her and the relationship at that time. Simultaneously, behind my back, she's still doing the smear campaign and basically acting like I was Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, or an evil monster or a serial killer. I don't know. Just, something where I was the boogeyman. And so she was still, doing that setup for later on, in the relationship, or, when the relationship ends. And so even though she was putting in the effort, and it was effort, it wasn't fake, to get back into the relationship with me, she was also continuing with the smear campaign behind my back, still doing that. And again, even now, I don't understand how a person can be that duplicitous, where they can, work on one hand to do something positive, and then the instant they leave the room, switch into the opposite mode and just, spew negativity. So I don't get it. I don't know how any human being could do that without just losing their mind, or honestly being able to look themselves in the mirror in the morning. But that said, so we did get back together, and the initial, I think, 6 weeks were amazing. They were really good. She continued to put in the work. And while I made, I guess concessions, if you will, on my end, she also made concessions on her end. And so let me repeat that. A narcissist made concessions in the middle of a relationship, which is huge, absolutely huge. Now, if I want to be cynical, I can say that was done in order to lock me back in. I know that some, people, narcissistic relationship experts, quote unquote, talk about how narcissists can, if they want to, do a mini love bomb phase if they feel that's what it takes to get you back into their sphere of control. And so maybe that is what happened on a conscious level. Maybe it was unconscious. I don't know. But just that happened. It lasted 6 weeks. And then the bottom fell out. And things continued to really go in a bad direction. So that continued for, I don't know, like maybe another 2 or 3 months, and then I'd say about that time, 3 months later, that the emotional discard was in full effect. And at that point, like I've said, I would describe her as a ghost, as vapors, a mannequin. She wasn't there, and when she was, she still wasn't there. Communication continued to dwindle down to almost nothing. The amount that we saw each other continued to dwindle down, to almost nothing. And so, very much full, in that post-emotional discard time frame. Where I'm going with all of this is that I realized today that it was very timely that we broke up and had our month apart and then got back together at the time that we did, where it was still very much in the devalue phase and not during or after the emotional discard. And so the key point, and like I've said in some of my other videos on this, the hypothesis, if you will, that I have is that the emotional discard happens when the narcissist has locked down on their other person. And so when they have your replacement, just queued up, they are ready to hop into a relationship. At that point, the narcissist makes the switch. They start focusing their energy on the other person, and they start taking away more and more energy and focus on the person they're still in the relationship with. And so while I don't have a crystal ball or anything, during the time that we were getting, that we got back together, that the narcissist at that point might have been in contact with the other person. They might have been actively flirting or, whatever. But at that point, they had still not made that, change where they kind of crossed that line as far as dominant focus. And so, and I think that's the reason why we were able to get back together, is because it was before the emotional discard and before she had switched to focusing her time and attention onto the other person. And so, yeah, it was just timely because, doing the math in my head, that's like 6 months, I'd say. 6 months from when we broke up and then got back together to the emotional discard, where she had pivoted, completely towards the other person, and the relationship was just basically on its deathbed at that point. Or as I like to describe it, hospice care. I mean, it's like they've moved the relationship out of ICU, taken the machines off, and it's just in hospice care. And they're just like, enjoy the view out the window because you're gonna die. And that's just kind of, from my perspective, what it feels like to be in a relationship after the emotional discard. So anyways, I just thought I'd make this video as another, anecdote to kind of give an example of what's going on, or what could be going on during the discard and the the devalue phase, and then the emotional discard, and how it changes for what the narcissist will and will not do depending on which phase they're in. So hopefully this video has been helpful. Thanks.